Would you believe me if I told you that Subway's bread legally isn't even bread? Or that their tuna might not actually contain tuna? Well, buckle up because we're about to slice into some seriously shocking Subway scandals. First up, let's talk about that thing holding your sandwich together, Subway's bread. You'd think something so basic would be, well, bread. But in 2020, Ireland's Supreme Court dropped a bombshell. Subway's bread had too much sugar to be legally classified as bread. That's right. Thanks to a sugar content 5 times the legal limit, their so-called healthy sandwiches were closer to dessert than lunch. And if that wasn't strange enough, let's talk about azotic carbonamide, a chemical used in their bread that also happens to be found in yoga mats. Yes, you heard that right. For years, Subway defended this ingredient, claiming it was totally safe. But when public backlash hit, they quietly removed it, without ever really explaining why their bread needed to be as flexible as a downward dog pose. You know that signature Subway smell, the one that practically grabs you by the nose and pulls you toward their store? Turns out, that irresistible aroma isn't just coming from bread baking. It's actually a manufactured scent pumped through the ventilation system to make you think you're walking into a bakery. In reality, Subway's bread arrives as pre-mixed dough sticks, loaded with preservatives, just waiting to be thawed and baked. But the real kicker? The tuna scandal. In 2021, lab tests found something fishy, literally. Scientists couldn't detect any tuna DNA in Subway's so-called tuna sandwiches. Not even a trace. Subway insists their tuna is real, claiming the cooking process denatures the DNA. But that still leaves one big question. What exactly is in that sandwich? And trust me, the rabbit hole goes even deeper. If you thought this was bad, wait until you hear about what's really in their meats. You'd think that after decades of making sandwiches, Subway would have measuring figured out. But in 2013, customers started noticing something suspicious. Their foot-long subs weren't actually a foot long. A nationwide survey during the lawsuit found that 80% of Subway's footlongs were under 12 inches, with some barely reaching 11 inches. Talk about a diet sandwich. And Subway's response? A true masterpiece of corporate creativity. They claimed footlong was just a marketing term, not an actual measurement. By that logic, their fresh vegetables could be last week's leftovers, and their Italian herbs could be from Cleveland. As you can imagine, this explanation went over about as well as a meatball sub on a first date. The lawsuit eventually forced Subway to measure up to its promises. They implemented new quality control measures, requiring franchises to use actual measuring tools, because apparently, about this long wasn't precise enough. But even after all that, Subway still wouldn't guarantee every sandwich would be exactly 12 inches. Their excuse? Bread can shrink or expand during baking. Court documents allowed for a half-inch margin of error, which, let's be honest, is the kind of mistake that would make a carpenter quit their job. The settlement cost Subway $520,000 in legal fees, and they had to add disclaimers on their menus stating that sandwich sizes were approximate, which is like telling your teacher your homework is approximately done. They even revised their training manuals to include specific instructions on bread measuring and sandwich assembly, creating what might be the world's most detailed guide to putting stuff between 2 slices of bread. But the footlong fiasco was just the tip of a much larger corporate iceberg. As customers peeled back the layers of Subway's business practices, they uncovered something even harder to swallow: the franchise system itself. Want to open a Subway? Get ready to shell out anywhere from $15,000 to $300,000 just to get started. But that's just the appetizer in this expensive sandwich of obligations. The real meat of the problem? Subway's franchise agreements. Store owners are required to buy supplies exclusively from Subway-approved vendors, often at inflated prices. One franchise owner calculated that they were paying 50% more for tomatoes than they would at a regular grocery store. And trust me, it only gets worse from here. Stay tuned, because the next Subway secret might just make you think twice before ordering your next sandwich. You'd think running a Subway franchise would be a breadwinner, right? Well, not exactly. Despite the chain's massive global presence, the average Subway franchise owner only makes about $31,000 a year in profit. That's barely enough to cover 1 year of college tuition, let alone run a successful business. And when profits are that thin, corners get cut faster than a Subway worker slicing cucumbers at lunchtime. Employees, the real sandwich artists. To save costs, many Subway owners understaff their stores, leaving one employee to do everything: making sandwiches, running the register, cleaning, restocking, and dealing with customers who want just a little more lettuce. We see you. The pay? Minimum wage if they're lucky. The training? A crash course that's often just watching a few outdated videos and shadowing another equally clueless worker for a day. One former employee reported that their entire food safety training consisted of being told, "If it looks okay, it probably is." A philosophy that would make any health inspector's hair stand on end. Shortcuts, spoiled food, and bold. With franchise owners desperate to save money, food safety sometimes takes a backseat. Employees have reported being told to eyeball expiration dates instead of checking them, scrape mold off vegetables and use the good parts, change labels on expired mayo to extend its shelf life, because apparently mayo ages like fine wine. Corporate inspections? More like a performance. Employees describe frantic cleaning sprees when they got word that an inspection was coming. Suddenly, everything would sparkle, expired food would vanish, and everyone would magically remember how to wear gloves. But the moment the inspector left the parking lot, back to business as usual. Subway's 2023 health code violations, more than their topping selection. If you're still holding on to hope, this next fact might change your mind. Over 2,000 Subway locations received critical health code violations in 2023 alone. That's more violations than there are toppings in their unlimited veggies selection. The biggest issue? Temperature control. Health inspectors found meat and cheese left at room temperature for hours, turning the cold-cut trio into a science experiment. One Florida location stored its tuna salad at a balmy 72 degrees Fahrenheit, apparently trying to evolve it into a new life form. And then there was cross-contamination. Employees were caught using the same gloves to handle food and money, because nothing adds flavor to a sandwich quite like bacteria from a $5 bill. One Ohio store used the same cutting board for raw chicken and vegetables, turning food poisoning into a game of roulette. Eat fresh. Or maybe don't. The vegetable washing situation would give a germaphobe nightmares. Some stores were cited for simply rinsing veggies under cold water for a few seconds, if at all. One inspector found dirt still clinging to the lettuce, giving eat fresh a whole new meaning. Another location stored tomatoes in a container that previously held cleaning supplies, perhaps trying to wash them from the inside out. Oh, and then there's the mold problem. Inspectors found mold in ice machines, on walls, and even behind the sandwich prep counter. Walk-in coolers resembled science projects gone wrong, with vegetables rotting faster than a teenager's bedroom. And if that wasn't enough, some stores had a full-blown pest problem. Dozens of locations were cited for mouse droppings near food storage areas. One Subway in Texas even had to temporarily shut down due to an infestation. At this point, the only thing scarier than what's in a Subway sandwich is what's around it. But believe it or not, there's still more to uncover about Subway's corporate secrets. Stay tuned, because the next revelation might just be the most shocking yet. If you thought Subway's biggest issue was their questionable tuna, buckle up, because things are about to get a whole lot worse. At one location, cockroaches were spotted having their own lunch break right at the sandwich prep station. Over at another store, ants set up camp inside the sugar container, apparently unimpressed with Subway's artificial sweeteners. And then there was the meat slicer incident. One health inspector found a store's slicer so caked in old food particles that it could have made its own sandwich. Cutting boards? Scratched up worse than a cat lady's furniture. Refrigerators? Malfunctioning. Thermometers? Broken or missing. Because who really needs to check food temperatures anyway? But the real masterpiece in cost-cutting creativity? Hand-washing hacks. Some locations filled their soap dispensers with water instead of soap, a move so nasty it would make any germaphobe break out in hives. Other stores blocked their sinks with boxes, broken equipment, or, in one spectacular case, a stack of expired bread that no one wanted to throw away. At this point, Subway's kitchens were less eat fresh and more health code roulette. And yet, all of these food safety disasters were nothing compared to the crisis Subway was about to face next, one that would shake the entire franchise to its core. Subway's expansion disaster, how they oversaturated their own market. For years, Subway's growth strategy was simple: open a store anywhere and everywhere. If a space had 4 walls and a roof, you could probably slap a Subway sign on it. Gas stations? Strip malls? Converted phone booths? Okay, probably not, but you get the idea. By 2015, Subway had crammed itself into every possible corner of America. In one Pennsylvania town, 6 locations popped up within a 2-mile radius. The result? A franchise battlefield. New Subway stores weren't competing against other fast food chains, they were competing against each other. One owner reported that when a second Subway opened in the same shopping center, his sales plummeted by 40%, like biting the hand that feeds you, except this time, the hand was making sandwiches. Subway's store closures, thousands shut down. Turns out, too much of a good thing isn't good for business. Since 2015, over 5,000 Subway locations have shut down permanently. In 2023 alone, 700 stores closed their doors for good, packing up their cookie displays and shutting off their ovens for the last time. Average store revenue plummeted from $480,000 to $350,000 in just a decade. Some Subway locations saw fewer daily customers than a vegetarian steakhouse. And for struggling franchise owners, selling their stores was nearly impossible. Subway's strict corporate rules meant owners couldn't just sell to anyone, trapping many in a business they couldn't escape. Some stores became worth less than their initial startup costs, about as valuable as a lifetime supply of expired mayonnaise. Desperate times, desperate measures. With sales crashing faster than a poorly wrapped sandwich, some franchisees got creative. One owner ran his store entirely by himself for 6 months, essentially becoming a one-man sandwich-making machine. Another turned half his restaurant into a convenience store, hoping that selling chips and soda would make up for falling sandwich sales. But as thousands of "Eat Fresh" signs disappear from storefronts across America, Subway's cautionary tale is clear. Even the biggest fast food empires can crumble, especially when they're built on oversaturation, underpaid workers, and sandwiches that may or may not contain real meat. And believe it or not, Subway's biggest scandal might still be ahead.